Nico Hulkenberg. Where did it all go wrong for you, buddy? How has it happened that for 2020, it's very likely you're not going to have a seat in Formula One? That's crazy to me. A man who has started over 100 Formula One Grand Prix, has got a pole position in a Williams, potentially could be without a seat. A guy who's consistently, despite some awful machinery over the years, hasn't been given the chance to succeed again in 2020. I find it bizarre, and yet the majority of the Formula One world seems to disagree with me on Nico Hulkenberg. And today, as we always like to do on this channel, I want to try and explore that a little bit. I can't wait to see the comments on this video and have a chat with you guys, because I think Hulkenberg, despite a fantastic, if not his best ever season in Formula One last year, very quickly, people's opinions of the German seem to have changed, and I wonder why that is. So, quick history lesson. Don't worry, it won't be long. I originally recorded this video about half an hour ago and realised the quick history lesson was quite a long history lesson. So I thought, you know what, let's start it again. Let's be more concise, clear, and then we'll talk in the comments, as I like to do. So 2010, joins Formula One with Williams. I'll keep digging Williams into the ground as long as I can, people. However, Williams jokes aside, just for a minute, don't worry, I will do more Williams jokes that I love to do here. Anyway, 2010, up against the experienced Rubens Barrichello, hot off that brilliant season in 2009 with Brawn F1, 22 points for Hulkenberg, 47 for Barrichello, 14th in the standings for Nico. Not a bad first season. The highlight for sure, 1,000,000%, a pole position in Brazil in changing conditions, in a Williams. Fair play, son. Fair play. That was just a glimpse of what he could do. A driver who, for the past 4 seasons in a row, every championship he jumped into, the season prior, GP2, 5 wins, 10 podiums, rookie year, wins the whole thing. The season before, Formula 3. The season before, German karting, single-seaters, you know what I mean. Every year, absolutely smashed it, won the championship, moved on. 2010, first year in his career where he didn't win anything except that pole position in Brazil. 2011, no one wanted him. Nobody wanted him. He had to be a test driver for Force India. 2012, he came back to Formula One with Force India, beating teammate Paul di Resta. I'm sure you all know Paul di Resta from Sky Sports, if you watch Sky, obviously. However, he wasn't quite feeling at home at the team, and an opportunity arose in the form of Sauber, who at the time had just let Sergio Perez go to McLaren. And don't worry, the Formula One driver market is always bizarre every year, and it just so happened 2013 there was a seat at Sauber, and Hulkenberg thought, yeah, this is a perfect opportunity in a car that the year before was almost winning Grand Prix with Sergio Perez, getting a couple of podiums over that season. It made sense for a driver who hadn't picked up a podium up to this point. So he moves over. What an awful car that 2013 Sauber was. Blimey, did I feel bad for Nico Hulkenberg. It was awful. However, I believe some of Hulkenberg's best performances in a Formula One car came in that season. 10th overall in the standings in a car that was awful. South Korea 2013, for me, was one of Hulkenberg's best ever Formula One drives. But he still decided to leave at the end of the season, and I don't blame him. Anyone with a Mercedes engine in 2014 was in a good place, and Hulkenberg went back to Force India for 2014, 15 and 16, beat Sergio Perez at the first time of asking in 2014, comfortably beat Sergio Perez actually, finished 9th in the standings, Perez finished 10th, however, Hulkenberg finished on 96 points. Perez finished all the way back with 54. Quite a big margin between the two teammates. However, Perez was the one out of the two to pick up a podium. And you know that would have been playing on Hulkenberg's mind, still not have picked up a podium. However, the next 2 years, bit of a dip in Hulkenberg's career. Up to 2017, Hulkenberg had mostly been the team leader, but those final 2 years with Force India, 2015, 2016, didn't quite go his way. Perez getting the better of Hulkenberg in those 2 seasons. Perez also picking up podiums. That's a very weird thing to say, picking up podiums. It's a bit of a tongue twister for you guys. Apologies if that was making your ears bleed just a little bit. So for 2017, another opportunity came Hulkenberg's way. A chance to leave Force India, but also to go to Renault, where he is currently at in 2019. First year alongside one of the best drivers as his teammate in his Formula 1 career, Jolyon Palmer. He beat him. He comfortably beat Jolyon Palmer, like most of Jolyon Palmer's teammates were able to do. At the end of that year, Palmer was out, in came Carlos Sainz. Now for 2018, last year, I regard as Hulkenberg's best season. Not only was he comfortably the best of the rest, but also a driver who I admired in 2016, 2017, Carlos Sainz, I think was really put in his place in 2018. And I think the public perception of Carlos Sainz really changed last season. And I think only now, at the end of 2019, it's finally reverting back to what people felt at the end of 2017. Hulkenberg did that. Hulkenberg was able to really prove himself against the hungry Carlos Sainz, the chili master himself, that fire burning in him. Hulkenberg was able to get the better of him. I would like to say, though, because I still think Sainz had a really strong year in 2018, Sainz did get more points positions than Nico Hulkenberg, and Sainz was only on loan at Renault, so he wasn't quite embedded into the team, and I would imagine it would have been playing on his mind just a little bit that he potentially might be losing a seat if he doesn't perform, and that extra bit of pressure probably didn't help. The gap wasn't mega. I believe it was only about 15 points between the two at the end of the season, but that did make the difference between 7th and 10th in the standings. So I think we can all agree Hulkenberg's 2018 was pretty stellar. 2019, maybe people don't think this as much. And for 2020, Hulkenberg's not got a seat at Renault. Renault have decided he's surplus to requirements. He's up against Ricciardo this year. Ricciardo is staying next year, but they're bringing in the Mercedes young driver, Esteban Ocon. And it's believed that he's still going to be part of that Mercedes family. So it seems a little bit strange for a works team, Renault this is, going up against Mercedes. And although there is a big gap, they want to close that down every single year. To bring in a Mercedes young driver and replace him with Hulkenberg seems a little bit strange. Now, of course, there is a nationality element there, which obviously will be in the majority of teams. They would love to have a home driver within their team because teams are very patriotic, and I totally get that. But to get rid of a driver like Hulkenberg, to me, seems a little bit strange. And it's one that, personally, it doesn't quite sit right with me. And I feel, you probably already understand this from what I'm saying, I think Renault have made the wrong decision on this one. Only time will tell. And Hulkenberg, who has been in Formula 1 now full-time since 2012. Ocon, who has now missed out a season, mainly down to the fact that Lance Stroll and his father and his business consortium, bought out Racing Point, is the reason Ocon's not in F1 this year. I think Ocon's good. And I think Ocon needs more chances in Formula 1 to prove himself. And that's where the question of this video really comes down to. Does Hulkenberg deserve another chance? So I think I definitely glossed over it a couple of seconds ago. So I'll just loop back just a second. 2019. How's this season been? I think it's been alright. I definitely feel Hulkenberg has been the most underrated driver in 2019. Okay, you could give it to Danny Kvyat. He'd also be another good chance. Maybe George Russell. Maybe Romain Grosjean, if you were crazy enough like I am sometimes. However, Hulkenberg currently sits in 12th in the standings. 1 place behind Lando Norris. 4 points behind Lando Norris. But he's ahead of Danny Kvyat, who got that podium all the way back in Germany now. Blimey, that was a long time ago. He's also ahead of Kimi Räikkönen, a driver who, for the first half of 2019, was on fire, but has perhaps slipped back a little bit in the second half of the season. Hasn't scored a single point in the second half of the season, Kimi Räikkönen. Hulkenberg, though, he's been consistent, picked up points in Australia, picked up points in Canada, France, was also able to do it at Silverstone, got 1 point at the very end of the race, then went on a bit of a streak, did Hulkenberg. Belgium, Italy, Singapore, Russia, scored points in Japan, but was disqualified, and then in the last 2 Grand Prix has also picked up points. This second half of the season, Hulkenberg has been brilliant. I've been mega impressed with Nico Hulkenberg in this second half of the year. How he's been able to bounce back, despite the fact he's not got a seat next year, I think has been incredible. A 5th place in Monza being the highlight of his season. However, that 5th place in Monza, and this is, I feel, contributed to the, I would say, I was going to say mass hate of Hulkenberg there. I think that's a bit extreme, but I suppose popular perception is that Hulkenberg hasn't been as good as Ricciardo this year. And when you look at results like Monza, 5th place for Hulkenberg, on its own, that is fantastic. But when you see Daniel Ricciardo in 4th, that just taints Hulkenberg's achievements just a little bit. The last 2 Grand Prix, Hulkenberg qualified outside the top 10 and has worked his way up into points. But Ricciardo's finished in front of him. That just taints that performance just a little bit. The gap between them, so just to give you a bit more context, Ricciardo's in 9th, Hulkenberg's in 12th, as it currently stands with 2 races to go. Hulkenberg is on 37 points, Daniel Ricciardo on 46, so it's 9 points that separate them, which isn't a fat lot, and very, very quickly, at the end of the year, we could have Ricciardo up in 9th, Hulkenberg 10th, on the same points, 1 point different. You know what I'm trying to say. It's very, very tight between the two of them, and yet public perception is that Ricciardo has had the edge. Qualifying, for sure, Ricciardo has been the better of the two. And at Ricciardo's latter time at Red Bull, Verstappen had the better of the two. But I'm not trying to say Hulkenberg's as good as Max Verstappen and is going to be on Max Verstappen's level if they were in the same car. I don't believe that. But I think what Hulkenberg has proved is that he's as good as Daniel Ricciardo. Maybe not as fiery as Daniel Ricciardo, isn't quite as ballsy on the brakes, ready to make those incredible moves where you don't expect. Maybe not as flamboyant as a character. Blimey, I don't think I'd ever call Daniel Ricciardo flamboyant, but cheeky chappy as a character. But yet, I don't think that should take away from his driving ability. I don't think that should take away from this man's performances and the loyalty he has shown Renault, despite the fact they had a pretty awful car in those first couple of seasons together. So the fact they've made the decision to go with Ocon, to me, still seems strange. But what I think is key when discussing Nico Hulkenberg, and many people believe, I have to address this, many people believe is the reason he's been shown the door in Formula 1, is that podium record. It's the fact that Nico Hulkenberg has the record for most Grand Prix entered without a podium. Which sounds not great, because there's definitely been opportunities to take a podium. Brazil 2010, with that pole position, maybe, but the car wasn't the best on that particular day. The ones that really stand out in my mind, the 3 Grand Prix, 2012 Brazil, a circuit he seems to love, is the Sao Paulo circuit, but 2012 Brazil, leading the Grand Prix, fighting with Lewis Hamilton, just lost it into turn 1, the track changing conditions, where he got his pole position in changing conditions, just slightly greasy, just couldn't quite turn in, lost the rear end, hit Hamilton, both of them out of the race. 2017, Singapore, that particular day wasn't really his fault, wasn't his fault whatsoever, reliability just snatched it away from him. And of course this year, Germany, the big opportunity for him to snatch a podium. He was up there fighting for the race lead with Max Verstappen. He had Lance Stroll behind him. He was really almost guaranteed for a second place, I believe, in Germany. I strongly believe that. However, like many drivers did, Lewis Hamilton did it, Carlos Sainz did it, Charles Leclerc did it, and yet many people, even I would say, the most hard-hitting and upsetting one was when Nico Hulkenberg went wide at the final corner onto the drag racing strip, into the barriers, and I don't think there was a dry eye in the house. I really don't. Is it a dry eye? I think that's the saying. Sounds a bit strange. However, you know what I mean. There has been opportunities for podiums. He's had cars where teammates have scored podiums. Daniel Ricciardo has got very close this season. Like I say, Hulkenberg has got close this season. Sergio Perez scored countless podiums over the course of 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016. And even in that 2013 season, while Hulkenberg was at Sauber, he was close on a few occasions, but it's never quite gone his way. And that's a big exemption on his CV. But I still don't feel it's a good enough reason to not put him in a car. I believe, and I think most of you will agree with me, there are drivers currently lining up on that 2019 grid and 2020 grid next year which are not as good, not as consistent as Nico Hulkenberg. There are still seats available for 2020, so it's not completely 100% confirmed he won't be there. However, the seats are Williams, which another Williams dig today. Who wants to go to Williams in 2020? Hey, it's a Formula 1 drive, so I shouldn't mock it that much. A seat is still a seat. However, that looks bang on now to be Nicholas Latifi. Toro Rosso and Red Bull, or AlphaTauri and Red Bull, are the only other two seats. And I don't think Hulkenberg is going to get those two, unless Alex Albon has an awful final two races and they decide to take a gamble on Hulkenberg. But I don't see that happening either. I was a firm believer, as most of us were, Hulkenberg would be at Haas in 2020. Some people felt Alfa Romeo, however they were keeping Kimi Raikkonen and the Ferrari young driver seat was always going to go to Giovinazzi. I think he should have gone with Haas. I think he would have loved to be at Haas. I think he's the perfect kind of driver for Haas. That consistency, that hunger that's still there to be on the podium, that experience. However, Haas decided to stick with Grosjean. I'm saying this through gritted teeth, which of course I was happy as a Grosjean fan. As a biased Grosjean fan, I was happy with that. But I still don't think it's the right decision. The team made that decision down to the fact how awful their 2019 car was. And they needed someone who understood the team, that himself, Grosjean's got plenty of Formula 1 experience, has been in a similar amount of races to Hulkenberg, maybe has a couple more races. And Grosjean, of course, has 10 Formula 1 podiums, more than Charles Leclerc. I'll always use that statistic. As long as I can, I will keep using that statistic. 9 for Leclerc, 10 for Grosjean. That's something that the team will definitely consider. But I think Hulkenberg deserves to be there. I think as soon as a new team comes into Formula 1, they will be sniffing at getting that signature. As soon as a team have a space free, Hulkenberg should be on their radar. I want him to be in F1. He deserves to be there. He deserves another chance. But of course, I want to know your thoughts. Because over plenty of videos this year, people have disagreed with me. I'd love to know why. Thank you for watching. It's been quite a rant, I would say, today, trying to get my opinion across on Nico Hulkenberg. But it's something I've wanted to say as 2019 winds down and we could only have 2 Formula 1 races with Hulkenberg left. That makes me a little bit sad. Anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you have enjoyed. If you made it this far and you're new, first of all, you're crazy. Second of all, feel free to subscribe. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed as always, and I hope to see you in the next one.